This is the Wise Guy Radio Show, a podcast dedicated to educating and inspiring through conversations with today's top talents in the world of glass. Hey, what's happening? Welcome to a Glass Blowers Companion episode number 16. How are you doing today? This episode features the talented Hannah Gibson, who is a glass artist based out of the UK. And Hannah and I had a great conversation. It was a pleasure to talk to her and get to share her journey and pick her brain about a lot of things between her artwork and science and all kind of fun stuff we talked about. And a quick background on Hannah. This comes from her website, which you can check out. It's Hannah Gibson Glass. I'll have the link in the show notes for you to check out. While studying geology at the University of Edinburgh, Hannah became fascinated by the mineralogy and the reactions between various elements, metals, and compounds. This led her towards a passion for the alchemy of glass. Capturing the nostalgic imagery of childhood, exposing hidden narratives, cast sculptural glass stands at the core of Hannah's work. Passionate about sustainability and recycling, using only 100% recycled glass and found objects. Hannah Gibson has her bachelor's in science of geology and also a master's in glass. And during our conversation, Hannah and I could have talked about all kind of stuff for hours and hours and hours. She's a wealth of knowledge and is all about sharing it. So if you have any questions about anything that has to do with any kind of glass stuff, she is a great source to reach out to. And I'll have all of her information in there. And as you'll hear in this interview, she hopes that you contact her. So that being said, just recently the wife and I got settled into our new place, which is why it's been a bit since I've recorded an interview and an episode, as we are finally settled down in our new nest. And it's nice to be able to record at home now instead of in the studio where it's like 1,000 degrees, especially right now in Florida where it's about 125 heat index and everything else going on. It's nuts. Myself personally, too, in my life, I've been off the job for a couple of weeks, and I'm heading back next week, back into Disney as the parks are reopening and people are getting back into the parks, which I'm itching like crazy to get back in there and get back to demonstrating and all that fun stuff that I miss a ton of, and just excited to get back in there. So I definitely will be sharing my experiences as that begins to happen. Keep your eyes on my Instagram through social media. J. Michael Glass is my main one, where I share most of the little insights into things. If you're interested in my functional work, you can check out my functional work, which has been updated. The name of that page is now J. Michael Functionals, and I'll have all these links in the show notes for y'all. My wife and I's podcast, our F Yeah Disney podcast, where we do every 2 weeks or so, we do an update on things that are going on out there in the Disney parks. So definitely check that out. And then if you're interested in some food talk, Julie and her friend Amy have a Disney food podcast called One Little Spice. And we've started to kind of group all these shows together under one umbrella of Wise Guy Media. We've got websites getting built, and we're excited for things that are going on behind the scenes. So definitely stay tuned for some updates on that. Also, if you're interested in supporting the show, you can support the show. One way for free is by leaving a review. If you have an iPhone and you listen to this on that, you can go to iTunes and leave me a review. It would be fantastic and definitely helps out. Whether it's a 5-star, 4-star, whatever you feel the show deserves, as well as a written review definitely helps. And also, if you would like to help support the community of Wise Guy Media and become a patron, the Patreon group is starting to get going. I just posted up a new video. I'm doing a brand new series on how to make birds. Just did the first video on making a small clear one, and these videos will evolve into eventually full color, how to do wing techniques, a bunch of different things. And these are all things that I've learned technique-wise working over at the Mouse House. Doing the stuff that I've been doing recently, and I'm all about sharing the knowledge. So these videos are exclusive for the Patreon groups, and you can find the link again in the show notes, or you can just go to patreon.com/WiseGuyRadio, and I've kept that link in there as Wise Guy Radio. But that being said, I'm going to let you get into this episode. Again, you can find all of Hannah's information in the show notes. Take care of yourselves, stay hydrated. It is the summertime, and we'll talk to you next time on A Glass Blower's Companion. Love you so much. See ya. Hey, Hannah, welcome to the show.
Hi there, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. It's great fun, thank you.
Yeah, you're quite welcome. Likewise, I'm glad we got to kind of get this to work. It's been a long time in the making, really, like about 6 months, I think, maybe something like that, since I contacted you.
I know, far too
Seems like
long.
yeah. So we both have so far survived this crazy pandemic that we're in the middle of right now,
That's
and
it.
I guess it's kind of driving us all artists into our studios, and uh, I don't know if it's forcing anything, but it's definitely given us an opportunity to live stream and share our stuff, out there with the masses and what we're doing, and um, being a caster that you are as a glass caster, it's a little different, I guess, doing live streams where like a pipe maker or an artist can put their phone up on their bench or whatever and make it easier to do live recordings. I guess kind of my question, just to start this off with, are you doing any kind of live streaming at all, or are you kind of staying secluded to your little space?
I've tried to do a little bit, and I've done a few things with the Glass Art Society and the Scottish Glass Society locally. But it's just tricky to try and juggle everything, isn't it? Unfortunately, I've got two hands, two arms, so it's trickier than I thought it would be. But I'd love to.
I've had people ask me if I would be happier if I had four arms, and I'm always like, well, maybe, but I probably would burn myself more.
See, I just like Doctor Octopus, perfect, perfect. It's got the perfect. I could do it then.
It'd be hilarious.
Is my inspiration.
Awesome. Heck yeah.
So what have your studios opened over there then? What's it like during lockdown for you?
So for myself, having my own space, I don't have anybody coming in, so it makes it easier for myself, and it's been easier for me to avoid just being out in public. At least early on during when this whole thing was starting for us, I would just go basically from home to the studio and then right back home. And I
Brilliant.
have friends that have larger studios, they either rent space out to other artists, or they like my buddies at Zen Glass, which we'll talk about later on with the Gas Conference. They were part of one of the hosts for last year's Gas Conference, and they've put up just plexiglass partitions because they do like a make your own wine glass or pendants and different things that people can come in from the public to pay to experience. And so they had to kind of evolve themselves and figure out a way to make that safe in a sense according to what the regulations are going on right now.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so it's actually worked out. And as glass artists, we're constantly on our toes and having to pivot and evolve right on the spot most of the time. So I think for a lot of us, it's just been kind of just whatever. We just kind of go with the punches, and I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I think the biggest issue that a lot of artists I'm finding are falling into is just on the retail and the sales side of things. For
Yes.
some, and then for others have actually increased their sales and have been more successful because of what's going on.
I
So
guess
it's
things like the internet helps, doesn't it? And websites and Instagram sales, or whatever it may be. It's making the world a smaller place in that respect and helping people make certain sales. But I don't know. It's tricky though, isn't it, really? Because galleries are closed. Over here
yeah.
they are anyway. Exhibitions have been cancelled. So yeah, it has changed the landscape completely.
Yeah, it seems for instance, I've seen a lot of artists in the pipe industry that are releasing a new line of work with a shop that they had already set up in a sense, to do a show, and so they're doing like a virtual sale or a virtual tour or whatever, on for the shops to help move the work, which I think is an interesting way of going about doing things. I know like the Salvador Dali Museum over in St. Pete, they've been doing virtual tours, and I know Disney's been doing some stuff like that. Like a lot of these major companies and industries per se that people go to a lot, like are the art world in a sense, and Disney in a sense is kind of part of the art world. And they're doing, kind of keeping the memories there and people happy by giving them the virtual experience. It's not the same, but it's better than nothing.
It's amazing though, because a lot of people might not get to go to places like Disney. So it has to made the world, it's more accessible now, isn't it, really? So
Yeah, especially here I am in Florida and you're in the UK and we're talking here on the computer. It's pretty cool,
it's
and it sounds
amazing.
like you're sitting in here with me. So it's yeah, it's wild. It's
Yeah.
wild stuff. So
Surreal.
yeah, so to get on track here, I'm really curious on early on. Like I know your bio, I personally know myself. What got you into the glass, but to share with the audience, what was early on in your life, your I guess influence in getting you into the glass world.
So I grew up in North Wales, in the UK, and so basically behind me I've got Snowdonia. and in front I've got the sea. And so because of that, because of the landscape, I got into geology. And so I studied geology at Edinburgh University, which was amazing. It was fascinating. And whenever I graduated, I took a course in stained glass windows, traditional leaded windows. And then I thought, oh, I did the usual progression where people then go into fused glass. I dabbled at lamp working. I tried it. And someone said that to become an expert takes 17 years. And I get that because it's hard work, isn't it? Like, full well. And then so I tried casting. But when I got into casting, I realized that I could try. So I did a master's in glass at the University for the Creative Arts in Farnham. So I started that in 2015. And I started there, and they've got beautiful bullseye glass, beautiful gaffer glass, spectrum glass, and I was using it, and the results were amazing. And then I said, could I try using sea glass or mobile phone screens or jars or bottles? And people were saying you could try it, but it's going to be impossible to do it. So I just thought, if it's impossible, I'm going to try. I love trying to do the impossible, and my tutor there was very, very supportive. And so he sent me off to Bovey Tracy, where they've got the House of Marbles. And so I chatted to them, and everyone else was being very conventional and had all these deep narratives about their work, and I just wanted to play, essentially. So by keeping the shape the same, which is the robot figure, it meant though that I could just focus on the material itself. So I tried casting things like sea glass or mobile phone screens, jars, food jars, bottles, perfume bottles, car windscreens, television glass, glass from bush shelters, medicine bottles. Basically, if people said it couldn't be done, then that was me. I thought, I'm going to try it. So it was great. But it meant I could interweave geology. So my knowledge of mineralogy and metals from geology, I could interweave the two, which was fantastic. So when we look at melting coefficients and things like that, I can draw from my previous background and use that for firing schedules and trying to calculate the little bits. So that was good, really. I loved it. I loved doing a master's, and I went back as artist in residence a year later, which meant I had full access to all these kilns and reciprolaps. And so over in the States, you've got Covington and his glass. So Covington make these amazing reciprolaps. Over here, we don't have anything like that, so we've got to import them. And the cost of that's phenomenal. So when you leave college over here, or stop being artist in residency, you no longer have access to these reciprolaps. You're like, oh my God, what do I do? Where do I go from here? So it lulls you into a false sense of security, I think. But yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, so I love it because for me personally, like besides the art and just the whole process of being a glass blower or glass artist in general, the science behind what is involved with it is what's for me is the most intriguing aspect of it. And like you're saying, playing with material that's been produced by a company that has a specific COE and a specific, they're compatible with their self. They're not necessarily compatible with the guy next door.
Exactly.
And it's I've done a little bit of fusing myself. I've done actually probably more fusing on accident than I have on purpose. With a relay going out in a kiln or something stupid. But it's always been fascinating to me, like, why are these two pieces of glass that I just melted together, and I saw them melt together, and they were perfectly smooth, and now they're separating. And like early on in my career, 21 years ago, back in '99, we had about a dozen colors in borosilicate glass, and there was really no good green, and jade green was the green that people were using. And I remember, this will never leave my memory from the day I die. I did like a wrap spoon, like a basic hand pipe that had like just like a trail of green glass going around it. Wow. It was all smoothed in. It looked beautiful. The next day I pulled out the kiln, and that green had completely separated itself from the surface, and I could run my finger down the piece, and I could feel that ribbon of green where it removed itself from the surface, just because the compatibility wasn't quite there, and they hadn't quite fine-tuned that formula yet. Now we have like 15 different greens we can use, and sometimes the greens are still crap, but most of them are pretty good. So it's interesting, dealing with expansion and contractions in different elements in glass, and a lot of it, after still 2 decades of doing this, having been self-taught, not having any formal education with the glass itself, I'm still learning myself. So hearing this, you talk about this stuff, it's just, I could sit and listen to you talk about it all day, honestly.
It's good fun. Things like car windscreens, when you fuse or cast them, they go this amazing green color. And it keeps the sort of, so if there's metals in it, it keeps that. So that, that would be amazing to try. You could try something like that. So all you do is go to, so here we have, um, recycling yards. You probably got the same there. So literally you just go collect, recycle, car windscreens, which are just thrown into a big dumpster, drag
Mm.
them out and have a play. But
Yeah, it'd be
it's
fun.
worth a
I've always
try.
wanted, like, I remember, like, as a kid, even seeing people that have made like little dragons out of beer bottles and Coke bottles and stretched out the necks all crazy and stuff. And a couple, and then I guess as a child also playing with my family, my dad's beer bottle in the fire, seeing if I can melt it, type of thing. And then eventually getting into glass and having those memories, and then trying it as an adult, seeing if I can melt beer bottles in the fire, but actually then do something with it. It was never quite hot enough to do anything, but I could still melt the beer bottle. But then I took,
Absolutely.
but then I go into my flame with it, and my torch that I have now really isn't designed for soft glass, like using soft glass at all. It tends to burn it out really bad, or just kills it. So I've never had any really good luck preheating a bottle and then trying to stretch it out, in a sense. But I know people are some artists even in the pipe industry and using boro as a regular thing. They're still playing around with different materials like a beer bottle, and it would definitely be interesting to experiment with a
Also,
variety of different glass like that, like you're saying.
it's time consuming, but it's really rewarding when you actually get it and it works. It's fantastic. It's a really good feeling. But
Yeah,
it takes a long time to play, and you're tinkering with temperatures and annealing, firing schedules, and so the whole thing's full of problems. And cold working, it's a labor of love, but it's worth it once you can do it.
do you find that the fact that you have like a specific character that you've developed that as a canvas has allowed it to be a little easier for you to experiment and put the time into the experimentation because like the shape is about the same even though you change the scale of it? Does that kind of help you at all?
It does, because I can just keep, by keeping the shape the same, my focus is just 100% on that material. So when I take it, so it's, for me, it's ideal. And then I can calculate the firing schedules, if I'm making it larger or smaller, but it just means my focus is just on the glass, which is where my passion lies, really.
Right, exactly. And I'm glad you're saying that because when I interview other the pipe makers on the show, and a lot of the guys and gals in the industry that have become successful, financially successful, but also successful as an artist and just understanding their material, are the ones that have developed in a line of work like yourself, a character or something that they can just use as a canvas. And then they can experiment with all the different shapes and styles and, different seals and just the, it's just the use of glass, I guess, in general. It's
Absolutely. My,
yeah,
my
it makes,
problem is when people come to me and say, I want a figure, but I want it in pink glass. And you look around, there's, if you think of jars or bottles, or there's very few, there's not many, not much pink glass around, is there really?
yeah, that's so true, especially like in that type of thing. Because we have pink and borosilicate, but in terms of like you're using recycled glass, so most of your stuff that you're using is like high production, you know, banged out quick by a factory somewhere potentially, and
Exactly
they're
right.
and they're not using pink.
Yeah. I do find, though, I get phone calls off different people. So someone the other day called up and said, I've accidentally reversed into a glass bush shelter, and it's all smashed. And I've called the council and whatever, but do you want to come with a bag and come and collect all the glass off the road? And seriously, I get phone calls like this once a week. So I'm going all over, just sort of shop windows and different places. So yeah.
That's so funny.
I have we have something over here in the UK, Free Cycle, where you put it online. Does anyone have any glass bottles that they would otherwise be recycling? And so word gets around, and every day probably I have about 30 different empty glass bottles on the doorstep, and it might be, I don't know, perfume bottles or jam jars, jelly jars, or Marmite jars. But there's just this big row. This morning was a Jack Daniels bottle just empty sitting there. Our post lady, I don't know what she thinks of us. I've no idea.
You have some homeless guy sleeping out in your front stoop of your house, or
That's
something.
it. That's it. They smell really nice and they're drunk. I don't know. It's not a good reputation.
Yeah, that's so funny. It looks like you're running a brothel or something out of your house.
It's true.
That's amazing. So I guess kind of to back up a little bit, what was the initial inspiration for the figure itself?
I just wanted to. I don't know. I worked in a school, primary school. I've done lots and lots of different types of jobs, and for a while I worked in a primary school. And we took with gifted and talented children, and we were to take the children to lots of museums and art galleries, and it wasn't about showing. In my head, we were taking them to the V&A, the Victoria and Albert Museum, and the British Museum to show them the world, to show them this is what it's all about. And it wasn't at all, if I'm honest, it was all about crowd control and damage limitation. And we weren't even saying, look, but don't touch. We were saying, march over to this corner and sit here and don't make a noise, don't make a mess, don't, and I just thought I was passionate about glass anyway, passionate about recycling and sustainability. And I thought, I want to share my process with as many people as possible. I want to make it accessible. And it doesn't matter if you're 4 or 104, it was a shape that was immediately identifiable. And people could, it draws your attention in, and because they're all the same,
Hmm.
you're immediately, your mind goes away from the shape after a while. But it was a way that I could, you know, I don't know, just make it more accessible to people. So I'd go into school. I started going into schools or societies to talk about recycling and what could we do. Glass societies all over, in primary schools, secondary schools, and which is, if you can get people into recycling, then it sets you up for life, doesn't it? Really. And so by showing them this is what a Marmite jar can turn into, whenever you go home, don't put it in the bin, put it in the recycling, and look what the possibilities are. It's I don't know. Mm, it's an interesting one.
Yeah,
I
I love it. It teaches, like you're saying, it teaches kids, not don't necessarily throw this in the trash because it's not garbage. It's that whole
Absolutely.
one man's trash is another man's treasure, and for you, it's a woman's art that it could potentially become.
That's it. When I started doing the masters in 2015, and we had a gallery show, and I don't know, we were talking about different things, and at that time I just wanted to show everyone about the recycling process and about the process in glass. And so what I started doing was I started making these 8.5 centimeter tall figures, the robots, and I started leaving them in places to find and for people to find and keep. So I would make them in cast glass, so it might be made out of television glass, and I'd put a note on the side, a little bit like Paddington Bear, and I'd say, you found me, and I've been made out of recycled television glass. Please keep me, just let me know where my new home is. And I put my email address, and I left out maybe, I think it was about 800 figures all over. And some people took them far and wide. So one went to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Someone took them skydiving with them. They went all over the world, Australia, literally everywhere. And then people would write back really nice notes, either about the shape or asking more about the process or about recycling. But it opened a bigger narrative with more people, and people would write. One lady wrote, she was called Pamela, and she said, she'd found this figure and she'd actually put it in the back of a car with a seatbelt on between two boxer dogs, and they drove around all the time. And she spoke to this figure, and but it opened up, I don't know, a dialogue to people who might not, because really, I remember being 2 and being told not to touch glass, not to play with
Uh huh.
marbles because they were dangerous. And so many people are told at such a young age, it's dangerous. So the people, whoever found these figures far and wide, it doesn't matter how old they are. It's playful, isn't it, really? And they
Oh,
can
it's
ask
remarkable.
questions about either, glass process. And a lot of people have gone on to take up, do glass courses. So we have a studio not far away at Adam Aronson's and London glass blowing or Devereux and Husky, and people will go there and try glass blowing. And it's great because they might not have thought about it beforehand.
Yeah, I love that, and so with myself working at Disney, I love
Yes.
that too. Exposing people to what we do, and um, Keith, who's my manager, he went to the gas conference probably over a decade ago, and just by chance he was there, when in the town that it was going on, I think it was in Arizona at the time or something. But anyways, they had asked him to come up and to I don't know if to talk to the audience or what it was, but basically they had asked the audience, like, how many of you were inspired by the artists that you saw at Disney blowing glass? And he said, like, 2/3 of the people raised their hands that were in the audience. And
Brilliant.
it's, you never know who the next Chihuly is going to be, or the next, Hannah's going to be, or, whoever that you're, exposing to this material. And, speaking of Chihuly, so I am also, I worked at one of Dale Chihuly's first, it was actually, at the time, it was his first permanent collection ever in the world. And I helped to install this thing, and I was quote-unquote security, but I also ran the education programs and did tours and trained all of our docents and stuff. And no matter how many times we told people not to touch this stuff, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I know you want to touch this. This stuff's worth like $9 million, but, it is what it is. But people all the time were touching the glass. And, we'd kindly say, please don't touch. But that tactile, glass is glass. Glass feels the same. It's like holding a glass in your hand. But I don't know, something about the light and the color that just draws you into wanting to touch this stuff. And I don't know, maybe if it's like the element, the fact that it could break because it is glass. I don't know, but I'm the same way. I'm all about touching things. And in our shops at Disney, one of the most common things we hear from parents is, don't touch it. Don't touch it. We hear it all day long. And I'm always joking with the parents that, just so you guys know, like, the majority of people who break things in our store are the parents that are telling their kids not to touch the glass.
It's so true, though.
So I love that you're doing this. And, on the same note, are you familiar with, I'm sure you know Josh Simpson that does the marbles and
Yes.
the Megapounds.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Right. So I remember reading about him years ago, and he was doing something very similar with his marbles, and people would send him an email to his website, and then he would mail them a marble. And the same thing, people were traveling and putting these marbles in like the bottom of the ocean, or like in the bottom, like just throwing it into a volcano, just crazy things. And he would get a note back about where this particular marble ended up at. And it's just, I don't know, I think that you're doing that is just, it's so fascinating. And, you call these little things sweet nothings, right? Is that what you call them?
That's right. It's
Yeah.
they're often found in pairs, whispering sweet nothings to one another. So
I love it.
it's tricky because I made one, and you trying to, so one was called a sweet nothing, and then because I started making so many of them, and I was thinking, what's a collective noun? So it became a whispering of sweet nothings.
That's amazing.
But
So,
back to Josh Simpson's work, though, it's
yeah.
amazing. It's incredible. His work is just awe-inspiring, isn't it? Really,
Oh,
it's
it's fascinating.
sensational.
Yeah, especially when you see just the scale that he works at, and what he has to do to not only be able to create the scale, the size, but also to like put a marble into a kiln that takes 6 months to anneal.
I know. But we see things, podcasts or whatever, and from Corning, and you look at lenses, don't you, on telescopes, sorry, that take best part of a year to anneal. It's amazing.
Yeah, glass is, I don't know, especially nowadays, the technology and where glass has gone and what it's being used for. Like you're saying, just thinking about going back to the very beginnings of like early telescopes to then like eyeglassware and stuff and microscopes, and now here we are where we couldn't live without it, and now you're taking this stuff, like you're saying, like cell phone covers or cell phone, the glass from cell phones. I think about it all the time, like how many cell phones are just getting replaced every year, and just, I know a lot of them are getting recycled, hopefully, but you never know. People are just tossing these things out, or they're sitting in their top drawer still for 10 years collecting dust.
It's true. Well, our relationship has changed so much, hasn't it? Even over the last 10 years. So now we touch glass all day, every day, don't we? With mobile phones, literally with touch screens, we're constantly touching that glass. Same way Gollum with my precious. It's all the time. And we've, before we might have spectacles or glasses to drink out of, and it's changed so much, just over a very short space of time, I think. For the better, really.
Oh yeah, completely. Yeah, it's been a huge leap in technology for us in a short matter of time. And I think for the, like, looking into the, like, just what I'm in with the pipe industry, it's the last 20 years of being involved in this, there's been a pretty massive evolution in terms of what's being created. The cannabis industry is also, with the laws and things that are changing, which has helped to spark the evolution in a sense,
Yes.
And then just takes one or two people to find out something new or experiment and say, hey, like you're saying, oh, you can't do that. Oh, screw you, I'm going to go do it. And then they do it, 10 times over. And then now everybody else is part of their narrative and their work. It's just fascinating, and as glass being that medium to kind of catapult the world in a sense. I mean, literally, I guess, to technology, and then you go into space, and it's, I don't. There's so many different topics I could talk to you about.
It's fascinating though, isn't it, really? I
Yeah,
can't.
it's so wild. So to me, obviously, I look at your little character figure, and he's kind of like a little Lego guy. Have you like, and I know that you've done some bricks and stuff too. Do you ever try to make them functional in a sense to be able to be stacked or to lock into place or anything like that?
I've tried to do things like that, but because I've been so busy trying different new types of glass. So there is an artist who does Lego bricks, Erin Park, and
Yeah, yeah.
he's awesome. And so he's been trying to do things like that. But I think so. I'll have all these ideas, and I'll think, oh, you know what? I've just got an awesome TV. I'm going to break it up and use that glass and try that. So I'm constantly focusing on the glass, I think. So I've got all these plans to upscale and make it bigger, and make it so that the arms are movable and the legs are movable. I just need to focus on yeah, on the shape rather than the glass.
Right.
I,
Do you
I've
have
been
like?
trying. Sorry, go on.
I was just gonna ask if you have like piles of notebooks with like full of notes in your studio.
I've got all these. So I think it's from doing geology. So I did geophysics for 3 years and geology, and I have all these technical folders which just look like mad ramblings, but I know exactly what they are.
Oh, I'm
I've just
sure.
got pile upon pile of all these technical folders, and to be honest, it's good with mobile phones now. You can take a photograph, can't you? So, and then I can put that in a technical folder. So firing schedules and things. It's easier to document and easier to record now than it was previously
Yeah.
because like
That's
when you're in a hot shop or whatever, you're covered in gubbins, and the last thing you want to do is be writing in a notebook. So I take a quick photograph of everything, which is a great document, and then go back in and fill in technical folders.
Yeah, completely. I know there's been times where I've had a quick thought or an idea or something I had to write down, and I picked up my little graphite reamer and wrote it on my bench. And I go back the
Exactly.
next day, and I'm like looking for it on my bench. I'm like, I know it was right here. I just wrote this yesterday.
That's it. I
It
love
is
it though when
powerful.
people will email or send messages via Instagram or wherever it may be saying, I want to try and I don't know, lamp work. It might be a medicine bottle or something. It doesn't matter what it is. And I love it because I can go, right, okay, and I can go back through my notes and send firing schedules. But it's great because you can share the information. And that's what I love about the glass world. From my perspective, anyway, it's a community. And everyone that I've spoken to and everyone I've seen in the world of glass, they're all so friendly. And
Hmm.
I love it. I think it's an amazing community to be part of.
Yeah, I completely agree. That was one of the reasons I started doing this podcast was, just being down here in Florida. And just the way my life has been, I haven't really had a chance to travel out to go to like the gas conferences or any of the trade shows and stuff. And I mean, I'm sure at some point in time I'm going to, but this show has been a way for me to reach out, and here you are in the UK, and I'm getting to know you through a phone call and sharing
Well,
your
it's
story
it's
now.
it's amazing because I can listen to your podcast from in the UK, and it's as though you're in the room. It's fantastic. It's
Yeah,
a
I love it.
great opportunity because we might not otherwise, it just makes the world such a smaller place. It's ideal.
Yeah, it's so much fun. Um, so something I wanted to ask you too. Have you had any like conversations with the company from Lego company about your work, and in terms of the style of it, or is it something that you don't worry about, or just something
I
that's kind of?
I contacted them back in 2015 when I started doing it, and they were very, very good and very supportive. And I've had different exhibitions, and so there was one in London, and someone from the education department with Lego came, and they were and they're asking about going into schools and having further discussions. So all it did was open up a dialogue, really. So everything I've done, it's been done. I've been in communication with them, but yeah, they've been very supportive.
That's amazing. I always kind of wonder about that because it's a big talk that I have within the pipe world, in terms of copyright and different things like that. And I have a Luke Zimmerman, who's a lawyer, I bring on the show to talk about this kind of stuff because I love the fact that you reached out to them instead of waiting to get a cease and desist order in the mail and then having the conversation.
It's a good point, isn't it?
Yeah,
Really.
yeah, totally.
I
Yeah,
love
it's
though
all
that
the
they've come along to different exhibitions. So like I said, there was a exhibition Glass at the Forge recent, not oh, well, a year ago, and the education from Lego, and they were very, very good in talking about coming into different schools and what we could potentially do in the future to open up a dialogue. Because like Lego's moving towards more sustainable materials, which is great, really.
Yeah.
So it just opens up a dialogue, really.
Yeah, because I saw on your Instagram you had the brick by brick exhibition that had come out, and it's just that's why I wanted to ask that because it's a fascinating just thing, just to be able to kind of collaborate with something that's been around for a long time that a lot of people can relate to, and like you're saying, introducing children and young adults to glass to potentially be a glass artist, but also you're introducing them to the Legos and the creativity behind that nowadays. The stuff people are
Exactly.
making out of Legos is just remarkable. I don't know how
Yeah.
it's done.
That's great. Aaron Park's work's amazing because he can do amazing lamp work, and they are interlockable. They're
Yeah,
brilliant.
yeah,
He's a nice guy. But everyone is though, aren't they? Really in the glass world, from what I can see, anyway. It's
yeah. I mean,
great.
we have the glass holes out there, that have the personalities that that are super big. They're walking around with their heads on the ground because their heads are so big. But I think overall, like we talked, you're asking me pre-show, about whether or not the glass world looks at the casting artist as kind of like the black sheep in a sense or whatever. And I've always felt the pipe maker for the longest time was the black sheep. And early on in my career, whenever I'd go to art shows, and then I would seek out the glass that was there, especially because they were local artists. And for the first decade of my career in St. Pete, I'd walk up to these artists and shake their hands and say my name and just always introduce myself until they got to know who I was. And there was a couple times where I would go to an opening or a gallery exhibition with them that they were showing their work, and there were other glass artists that were there as well, which is why I wanted to go. And I'd introduce myself and tell them I'm a lamp worker, and immediately they're like, "Oh, you must make pipes, huh?" And in the meantime, I'm wearing like a glass pendant that I made or something that trying to show what I was making, even though I was making pipes, but it was still we were still looked down upon in a sense, and then even within the gas conference as well. And now the gas conference is sharing the pipe world, and it's again, it's just the evolution of glass, and having artists like Salt go to Corning or Micah Evans, and do a pipe demonstration or teach a pipe class, and this world-renowned glass community, art gallery, studio, historical place, it definitely is the degenerate art in a sense that we do as pipe makers have definitely been pushing through a lot of boundaries, and I know it's taken off around the world. In Scotland and Ireland and over in Japan and throughout the UK. They have like the UK Flame Off now that they're doing, and there's a lot of interesting things going on. And I'm going to be curious too to see like at one point in time, like because in the pipe world we do a lot of collaborations in a sense, and I'm sure and within the casting that there's collaborative efforts as well. And that's why I was wanting to ask you, like, do you ever collaborate with other artists, like in terms of, you have your specific shape that you're creating, but do you ever collaborate with the style and design, the material that's going into it, that kind of stuff?
I do. So I've been building this collection. So it's not for sale, it's to keep. And essentially they're all 27 centimeter tall figures. And so they're all different glass artists glass. So it might be, so over in the UK we've got Colin Reed and David Reiki. There's dozens and dozens of them. And so Aaron Park has one of them. And so I'll use their glass to make the figure. And then so essentially there's just this um, a big collection of all these different characters. And then the idea is that you look at it and go, right, okay, that's a Colin Reed, that's a David Reiki. You can get a better idea if you have a look on my Instagram page, but it's a way of making the community a smaller place, really. So yeah, so I hope in time to keep them all together, and yeah, it's good fun. I enjoy doing
Yeah,
it.
it is.
What you're saying though about pipes is interesting because over in the UK, lab work, pipe makers do get an enormous amount of respect. And I went to SOFA Chicago last year in 2019, and I went to a talk by Susie Silbert that was put on by the AACG, and she was saying about how amazing they all were, and she was about pipes, and she was showing this. There was an hour-long talk about all these different pipes, and she was saying about all the new work that they're going to get into Corning, and she was just it was incredible because you can see the detail was fascinating, but she had nothing but praise for pipe artists.
Heck yeah, that's great to hear. I've always said, like, to me, the tech in terms of technical artists in any type of medium that's out there, I think the pipe maker is probably one of the most technical artists out there.
That's
There's
true.
there's so much that's involved. For me, the pipe making, it's not only taught me the material. I enjoy this the I guess the ceremonial aspect of using the pipes. But for me, it's scratched the itch of I've wanted to get into architecture and engineering, and so it's
Ah,
helped me scratch that itch because I draw blueprints for what I make. If it's something new, I'll sketch out a paper and create a couple rough sketches, and then make a physical blueprint in a sense of what materials are going to go into it, and try to figure things out on paper first, just the way my brain works. And it's just one reason I've continued making pipes. But I also took about 2 years off recently from making pipes just to kind of reset my brain. For the longest time, I was a production artist and cranking out hundreds of stuff for wholesalers and distributors and stuff. And once I got my job at Disney, I was still doing that, and I got burnt out because I was just working full time and doing my own thing full time. And I had to kind of reset my brain to tell myself, like, hey, I've got a paycheck. I don't need to do this anymore. And took that. I literally had to take 2 years off. And so now when I go to my studio, I'm not worried about, okay, today I need to make 100 of this. Today I'm going to make just maybe 2 of these and spend the whole day on these 2 specific pieces. And it's been a tough journey for that part of it, but it's also been very rewarding for myself to realize that and recognize that early on, instead of 20 more years down the road where I'm at a point where I'm like, oh, fuck this glass stuff, I'm done with this. I'm selling my torches and never touching it again.
so now, because they talk about that state of flow, don't they, that you get
Hmm.
into? So do you get into that state of flow where you just 100% focus on the glass and you lose 2 days?
It's funny that you say that. So for the longest time, yes, I got the flow state, and I talk about that on my show a lot, about the importance of getting to that point of flow state. And for me, it's once you understand your material and your comfortability in your studio and your environment, it allows you to relax and just focus on what you're doing. And 5 hours later, you come back from wherever you went.
Yeah.
And then I got my job at Disney, and so all day long, I've got thousands of people watching me, and because I'm very social and I also educate, I'm also constantly talking, so I don't ever get that chance to get into a flow state. And now we fast forward to the quarantine time, and we went ahead and closed. So now I've got all this free time in my hands to do glasswork. And I was still, because at the time working at Disney, I only had like 1 or 2 days a week in my studio, if that, maybe 2 days a month to do my own thing. So my brain was always like, oh, I got to get all this done today. And my wife was like, dude, you need to chill out. Like, stay home for 2 weeks, unwind. You have like the next 2 months or so, because we knew I was going to be out of work for a while,
Yeah.
to kind of take my time and do stuff. So I did that. I went back in the studio. I started doing live streams, and I realized that I was right back into that same mindset I was at work, where I got my phone on, and I'm just talking to whoever's watching me working. I can't hear or see what they're typing to me. I'm just talking away, and it wasn't allowing me to get into that flow state, and it was something that I really was missing. So I just turned my phone off and said, screw that, I can't do live stream right now. I need to get this flow state going. And then I got, about a week later, I was in there doing my thing, and I didn't even realize I had got into that state until I came out of it, and I was just like, oh, that there it is, kind of thing. Like that light bulb went on again. And because of that, I haven't really been doing a lot of live streaming, because it's just because of my job that I have on a full-time basis. I'm constantly being watched by people, and I can't just have my phone on knowing I have an audience and not talk to them. You know what I mean?
It's a
So
good point, isn't it, really?
yeah. So it's been wonderful having just me, myself, and I in my studio with my headphones on, and whatever I'm listening to, it doesn't matter because I don't hear it when I go into flow state. Just I'm out there somewhere.
It's true though, isn't it? 'Cause you just lose all sense of time and space and everything. But you need to remove distractions, like you say, and not do the live stream. And even though
Hmm.
your instinct is probably to put the phone there, and it's difficult, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it has been a struggle, especially with what I do as a content creator, and knowing that people are at home right now, and it's like I always kind of joke that I was born with this guilty conscience just from day one. So like it's a little bit of guilt. It's like, okay, I've got people at home that are maybe bored and they want to see something and be entertained, so maybe I should just turn my phone on, or whatever. But then I ended up not doing that. But it's kind of funny too because some of our artists that I work with, Miguel Arribas is one of them, who's been a flame worker for I think 40 something years, and he does lace work and the running stitch technique,
Oh
and
yeah.
his work is incredible. He has a glass castle he made about 3 years ago now. That's over in the Shanghai Museum of Glass that our company donated to him. He recreated the storybook castle that's in Shanghai Disney, which is
Wow.
like the biggest castle Disney's ever had. But this castle Miguel made, he spent like 50,000 hours or some kind of not that.
Oh God.
No, it wasn't that long, but I think it was 500 hours and it was 50,000 stitches. I just did a video
Wow.
just before, but yeah, it's incredible. And they're all component pieces. But he had a blueprint of the castle and made the components and like built this thing. I mean, it's just incredible. But when he's working, and I'll stand there and watch him work myself if I'm working, because like okay, so in Magic Kingdom, we have in the front of our shop we have our little flame working station, and in the back of our store we have our hot shop where we do verbal demonstrations of what we're making throughout the day. So if I'm doing the hot shop in between my demos, I'll go up front and hang out with my other glass blowers, and I'll sit there and watch Miguel, and he's not there. Like he's there physically, but he's gone. He's completely in like focused in whatever it is he's doing, and he's been working. I mean, his company is our, his last name is our family. Is his family is our company in a sense, and so he's been doing this forever, and he's able to have an audience watching him and just put on a show and not interact necessarily with what he's doing unless he's asked a question. But if you ask him a question, you got to ask him 2 or 3 times before he actually like snaps out of wherever he's at to come to you to answer the question.
That's
It's
amazing.
yeah, it's interesting. It's just I don't know if it's just because he's been doing it for so long that he's just kind of gotten used to it or just numb to it in a sense.
He's probably confident though. He's got a good team of people around him who, 'cause everyone around him's, yeah, will help out. So it's probably a confidence in all of you as well.
Yeah, yeah, probably because I know like our fellow cast members that are working the floor will answer questions or get his attention to answer the question. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's fascinating, but yeah, it's definitely it's so important for I think in any art form really to get that flow state. I mean, I think it's in life in general. I used to do jump rope exercises, which I got to start getting myself back into again. And I know like when I would get a good jump rope workout going, I would get a flow state just from the momentum of the jump rope and me doing my thing.
Wow.
So I think it's just I don't know. I've always been into meditation and the kind of Buddhist philosophies of things in life, and which might help me personally. I don't know, but it's just I like to find flow state and just in life.
No, I'm right there with you, 100% with you. I get
So
that completely.
yeah, it's important. I think it also helps to connect us to each other, as
It
well.
does. It's true. It's true. I do meditation, and my dog does it with me. She's called Daisy. She sits by my side, waits
Nice.
patiently. It's great.
That's so cute. So something else I wanted to ask you earlier too was the scale that you do. So I've noticed that you've done some pretty large pieces. Like, are you have you gotten to a point to where you found your limit on how big you can go with some of your little characters that you're making?
I was talking to so there's a really nice guy in the States, Jay Scott at the Habitat Gallery in Florida. One of the
Mm-hmm.
nicest people I've ever met. Lovely, absolutely delightful. And he said, oh, right, how about upscaling it to 41 centimeters, so that's 16 inches. And I said, yes, great idea, really, really good. But it's been so problematic. So it's all to do with making molds larger and keeping it all in proportion. And I tried doing things like 3D printing, and so it's great, and it's the best challenge ever. I just didn't realize quite how much a challenge it would be. So you've gone from 26 centimeters tall, weighs about 2.7 kilograms, and then to scale it up to 16 inches is about 10 kilograms in weight. So it's trying to keep the mold so it won't leak, and so there's so many elements, and even trying to collect glass. So 10 kilograms of 10 kilograms of television glass. It's really hard to actually try and source all of that. And what one of the figures was for or milk bottle glass and recycled watch parts. And so to cast with recycled glass isn't the most sensible thing anyway. But when you're adding in things like watch parts, and it just all I'm doing is increasing the risk of all the things that can go wrong. And then to actually
Yeah.
cold work something that's 16 inches tall and 10 kilograms, it's okay if you're because I've been doing a lot of work from home. So hand lapping something that's, on a sheet of glass with grit, something that's 10 kilograms, it's all right for the first hour and 2 hours, but then on the second and third day and like a week later, and it's, and I look down and I think I should have these massive arms, and I don't. It's so disappointing. And it's just day upon day. And goodness only knows what our neighbours think I'm doing, but there's this, and if you're on 60, 80 grit and it's just that, the scraping noise, God, it's a labour of love. I wouldn't change it for the world. And I love the fact that it's everything can go wrong until the very last minute. It's just, what do they say, mildly vexing. But I love, increasing the size. I love doing all of that, but it's just filled with technical problems.
I didn't even think about that too. Like you're saying, like adding watch parts, that just completely helps to change the alchemy of what's happening inside the glass itself.
Exactly right. And even so, if there's like bits of bronze, bits of brass, bits of silver, bits of copper. So watch parts essentially can be made out of any metal. So you could take the bits of stainless steel out and add that. But if you're adding all the different elements, there's so many different types of metals. So you're asking recycled glass to do something it doesn't want to do anyway, and then you're asking, you're putting in so many other variables. So you're just asking for mistakes, really. But it's good fun when it works. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, so do you have like a idea of like what your success to failure rate is on things?
Well, the beautiful thing with glass is if it doesn't go to plan, it can be recycled. So it
Right.
just, and that, it can keep going and keep going. But things the first time rarely go to plan, and so you just got to keep trying, haven't you? I daren't work it out actually what the success to failure ratio is.
You probably
I
don't want
daren't
to.
look. There are things that you just don't want to know, is there? Like, so how much equipment that you've got, and they're just things that you're probably best off not knowing. We've all
Yeah.
got
Like
bits of equipment that we never use, and because you get it because you think this is awesome, it's the best thing I've ever seen in all my life, and it's going to really help with time. And then some of them some equipment, glass equipment's too pretty to use, isn't it? Really.
oh, I know what you mean. Yeah, definitely. I know. I get these. I got some new brass reamers in a couple weeks ago, and I've been using graphite reamers for 20 years, and that I never thought to go to brass for, so I don't know why, but graphite wears out and you lose a trueness to size and shape and everything. So I got these new brass reamers out, and I'm like, oh, these things are shiny and pretty, and I know they're gonna be covered in beeswax and soot and carbon here pretty soon, but let me enjoy these while I got them, kind of thing.
That's it. But you
Yeah,
really enjoy them, don't you? They're great.
yeah,
I was
yeah. It's
looking on
amazing.
like the Grind King Instagram page the other day, and they've got all this incredible equipment. So I'm thinking, oh yeah, I'll have that for Christmas and that, and this big shopping list. I don't want to use it. I just want to look at it and admire it.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting too, like the cold working aspect of it is for me. I don't want to say I'm a lazy glass blower because I'm not. Like I'm super driven and I'm always I have a high work ethic, but it never seemed fun to me. And like you're saying, labor of love to spend 2 days to having a cold work a piece. It's definitely there's not only the danger element on one side of it. If something slips and I mean there's all kind of issues you can run into, but just it's a process and having to switch between different grits and the polish and it's just to me it's apples and oranges in terms of what we're doing in the glass world.
It's true.
Like it's so fascinating. Did you ever like? I mean, I guess early on, doing your casting and stuff, you had the understanding that you then after this piece was casted that you then had to cold work it. Was that ever anything that drove you from not maybe wanting to do casting, or was it more of a motivational factor to want to
I,
do?
I think so, initially, I started making cast glass using things like gaffer glass, bullseye, which I love, spectrum. It's fantastic and it cold works. It's like butter basically. It's amazing and it takes hardly any time to cold work. Now I just wanted to show that even though, so I can show people who aren't glass artists or people who are glass artists, I can show that you can cold work it to a perfect level. So I can take it all the way through from pumice to cerium. So right at the start, I decided it was one of the most important things I was going to do. I didn't want there to be devitrification on the back. So yeah, I just wanted to show you could, even with recycled glass, it could be absolutely perfect and it could be as good a quality. But it just takes a lot longer. But
Hmm.
it's worth it. Sometimes it's
Oh
worth
yeah,
it.
yeah, I completely agree. So I guess, and then early on, how did you go about marketing your work in terms of making a
I
living
just
at it?
I think I just started so when I was doing my masters, I started uploading photographs of the process. So I wanted to share with people. So for example, this is what it looks like to use a flatbed grinder. And like with you, like with your podcast, people ask questions, don't they? And
Hmm.
and so many people, I might get 10 messages a day of people saying, right, well, where can I do a glass course? Where can I learn more about the process? How, you talk about lost wax, where can I learn about this? And so because I could share that passion, and people were saying finding out about courses and things. So for me, social media was a good way of interacting with people, and it sort of grew from there, I think. But like you've seen with your podcast, people are desperate to know more, aren't they, about glass and the world of glass, which
Yeah,
is
it's
great, and
amazing.
you want to share it really. When you're
Yeah, yeah,
passionate about something, you want to tell as many people as possible. So,
yeah,
so it's
absolutely.
nice because it can be interactive. So things like Instagram's great because people can ask a question, and they could, for us in the UK, they could be in Australia, all the way other way around the world, and within 5 minutes they've got a reply, haven't they? Really?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because I know early on doing this, there was still like the secrecy of what was being done. People were. I'd walk into a studio and they would have their bench covered with a blanket. There was a guy in St. Pete that was working out of the St. Pete Pier when it was there at the time, and he did like little fish and sea life creatures. Phenomenal, talented artist. But there was times that I would go to the pier to see if he was there, and I would see his bench was covered with a towel, or he'd have like a curtain up, hiding the bench in a sense. And wasn't necessarily hiding it from me, but it was just the secrecy of the magic behind the curtain, like the Wizard of Oz kind of thing.
I'm
And
with
then
you.
all of a sudden the internet happened and social media happened, and it definitely tore that curtain down pretty fast. And people, if you wanted to learn, you had to pay a lot of money still, but the secrecy, wasn't really necessarily there. It wasn't like the Italian masters that would, keep you on the island and never let you leave kind of thing anymore.
That's it. That's
Yeah.
it. But there's this shared bond, isn't there, with glass artists because it takes such a long time to learn
Hmm.
how to do anything. It's not, you can't, and a lot of it's tacit knowledge. So you can, 5 years down the line, and you pick up loads of little idiosyncrasies, don't you? And so things that you've learned that you probably don't even realize that you do. And I don't know, it just takes such a long time to learn. And we're
No,
all constantly
yeah.
learning, aren't we? It's so it's not as though, it's not a finite curve, really. You keep going.
Yeah, it's one of the things that's kept me doing this for as long as I have. So I deal with ADHD, and I think for me, one, for the glass, because of the fact that I have to pay attention to what I'm doing constantly, or I'm gonna hurt myself, or my
Yes.
work's gonna go to shit. So for me, it's therapeutic for one, but also the learning factor. Like I've never gotten bored with what I'm doing. I mean, sure, there's been days where I don't want to go to my studio because I want to go hang at the beach and lay on the couch or whatever. But like you're saying, that learning curve, and they always say like the 10,000 hour rule to master anything. And early
Yes.
on, you said about 17 years it may take to master flame working, and I think with glass it's like 10,000 hours per technique. Having to
It's true,
you know
isn't it?
figure it
It's
out,
it's
and
true.
it,
Well,
and
that's the beauty with, yeah, go on, sorry.
I was saying just in terms of educating and teaching classes, like there's only so much you can actually teach. Like you're saying, like the idiosyncrasies of things that we do that we don't even realize that we're doing that you can't teach somebody else. And when the classes that I've taken, I'm not really watching what's going on in the torch. I'm like watching the bench, watching the tools, watching hand movements, and what are they doing differently. And with
Exactly.
Miguel, Miguel Arribas, I did a video of him about a month and a half back. Well, when we went back to work for a little bit and then had to leave again. But I did a video of him doing his stitch work, and it's just he's a machine when he's working. He'll make the same 5 things in a row, and they're all identical. He knows exactly how many stitches are on the top of a spire for a castle, kind of thing. And so I could video him from all these different angles and make this seamless video out of 5 different times he's made this one piece. And there were little things that he was doing with his fingers that I picked up on watching the video, little taps and just little small things. And I showed him it. I'm like, "Do you even realize that you're doing this?" And and is this something that you're doing because it's creating or it's beneficial to the process? And he's like, "I don't even realize I'm even doing that." He said it's probably more habit than it is function or anything of that nature. It's just habit. strictly.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's incredible watching that. That's what I liked about, things like, the gas conference last year in St. Pete's was because you could go to all of these amazing places and watch people blow and do flame work. And you were literally like on the edge of your seat, weren't you, just watching, just in awe.
Hmm.
But to be honest, St. Pete's is awe-inspiring anyway. You've got the Imagine Museum and the Mirren Art Gallery in Chihuly. It's I'm going to be dead honest, it's not like that here. That there's so much glass. It was incredible. It's just, yeah, it was awe-inspiring. I've never been anywhere like that and spent, a whole week just immersed with glass. I was in seventh heaven. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it was wild growing up in that area because I was probably like one of maybe three or four flame workers at the time when I first got started, and then we had a couple of the furnace artists that were there, and within Tampa Bay, which is like Tampa, St. Pete, they're across the water from each other, so it's a tight community in a sense. But once the Chihuly collection came in town, he did a Chihuly Cross Florida series where I think he was in eight or nine different museums and galleries at the same time, and it was his first time ever doing like this broad spectrum show that was simultaneously happening in all these different museums, and it was fascinating to see this logistics about how it was done. But with our museum in St. Pete, the Museum of Fine Arts, this museum's been there since like the early 1900s, and this exhibit that Chihuly came into was the biggest and most popular and financially, you know, I guess positive for the museum itself. And it was so popular they extended his show for another 2 months, and he realized the popularity of his work in the area, and he actually also fell in love with the downtown St. Pete area, with the waterfront and all the greenage and the grass and the plants and the landscaping and everything, and wanted to have his glass somehow showcased there. So that's when his
Wow.
permanent collection had come in. And once that permanent collection had come in, I was talking to some buddies of mine, and we're just kind of laughing and joking about how St. Pete's going to become the next mecca for glass. You have like Italy, and you have Eugene, Oregon, and then you have little old St. Pete, Florida. That's now this new glass community for the snowbirds to come down and hang out in St. Pete and enjoy their glass. Yeah, and here it is. And like you're saying, now it's this huge collection of galleries and museums, and just the appreciation in general,
Yeah,
is
it's
also
so
a driving
true.
factor.
It's so true. If I'm honest, it was so easy to get over there from here. So you can fly from London to Tampa direct, and then you're basically in St. Pete's, aren't you? You've got that amazing bridge and all the water. But
Yeah.
it was amazing. It actually probably took less time to get over there than it would for us to get up to Scotland. But
Wild.
it's a great opportunity. Yeah, but there were so many things to see and so many things to do, and the flame working to watch was incredible.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't imagine. I wish I was there. Like I say, it's frustrating, but it is what it is. It's the first time it's in my hometown, and here I can't go. But
It's not
it,
fair. I think
it
it's the
is. Yeah,
next one next year in Seattle, I think.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah, hopefully this pandemic goes away so we can get back to some kind of sense of reality.
it's true. But in some ways, though, it's given me chance. I know it's very selfish, but it's given me a chance to sort of pause for a bit and reflect. And I think I needed it probably, and work out, which direction I'm going. So I think sometimes we just need to pause for a bit.
Oh, I completely agree. I think it's been beneficial and not for, I guess, depending on who you're talking to, but for a lot of people I know in my circle of people and family and friends, it's been huge. Like you're saying, it's kind of a chance to sit and reflect and change directions potentially. Are you in this job that you've been stuck in for so long that you're miserable with, and now you're home and have an opportunity to learn something new? Or like I spent the first 2 weeks that when the wife's like stay home, and I spent that time learning how to use PowerPoint Pro on my computer doing video edits, just because I've been wanting to learn how to be a video editor. So it's and those skills now I'm using every week now that I'm doing more video work and stuff. It's definitely,
Exactly.
been, like you're saying, not in a selfish sense, but also I think the selfishness that you might say it is, I think is going to be beneficial for the world from us, that are learning new skills and techniques and things.
It's true. And things like the gas conference this year, they put it all online for free. And
Hmm.
and that was great because my like friends and family. So I keep rabbiting on about glass to everybody who'll listen, and even people who won't listen. But I could send them links and say, watch this, just listen in. And so many of them are going, I get it now, I understand what you're talking about. So and they wouldn't necessarily travel to Seattle, or it was supposed to be in Sweden this year, but it meant though that my parents could watch, or other family members could watch and go, yeah, I get it. It all
Hmm.
makes sense now. And that's an amazing opportunity, and they wouldn't have had that without this break, pause.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. It's definitely been beneficial. And again, hopefully, we kind of get back to some sense of normalcy here some point in time. If there ever will
Fingers
be a
crossed.
normalcy, yeah, we'll see what happens.
We'll see what the new normal is. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I refuse to say, because people are like, "Oh, this is the new normal." I'm like, I'm not. My mindset is not that right now is the new normal. Yeah, this is just a bump in our life as human beings here.
That's right. Because you're based in Florida, aren't you? Are you?
Yeah, yeah, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're going through this crazy explosion with this thing right now. Like we had like, I think we were kind of somewhat laughing about it the other day. Like when this thing first started, we were around 30 to 40,000 cases in the state in like the first few months, and now we just surpassed 200,000 cases in the state.
Wow.
So yeah, we had like 11,000. Every day's been around 8 to 11,000 positive cases now that
Crikey.
they. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, my
Wow.
wife and I, we actually had to get tested about a month ago now. Through her, she got exposed for someone at her potentially at her job that she has. So
Oh no. Stressful.
yeah, totally. Yeah, and it was actually her second time getting tested. So yeah, I've had my own share of stress with her, you know, having this thing being around her and her job. So the blessings of being an artist and working in your own studio and staying away from everybody, you know.
So you've had an exciting, like for newlyweds, your first year. So the first 6 months have been really exciting for you, but all in a completely different way than
Yeah,
you probably expected.
yeah, stuck inside the house with each other. So it's been a good lesson for us as a relationship, you know, which has been
Good
awesome.
point.
Yeah, yeah. Something I wanted to ask you too, as we get toward kind of wrapping this up here, is your actual your mold making process. And for myself, my entire life I've done sculpture of some sort, and I've also in the past have done like latex makeup, doing making a mold and a cast, and doing that kind of stuff. And then early on in my glass, one of the guys I had worked with, he did lost wax, doing jewelry and different things like that, but also little like porcelain style figurines he was making, but they were all casted glass that he was doing. And it was always really intriguing to me to see, that I could take this sculptural technique skills that I've had as a child and in my early adulthood and clay and stuff, and then potentially go into glass with it. And then I started getting exposed to people that were doing glass casting and seeing like sand casting and different types of materials that were used. Do you have like for your pieces? Do you have like a specific material that you use for your molds, or have you had to experiment to find which is the best for you in a sense?
I'm still experimenting. So I
Yeah.
started off with lost wax, where you have the wax and quartz and fine casting plaster and water, and then I was looking at the sustainable aspect of it, and really, it's to put quartz into the environment is probably not the best thing. It's really
Hmm.
not. So I was looking at ways, like say with porcelain, and I tried sand casting, and then I've been working with things like earthenware, clay, and then adding grog to it, so like bits of chopped up kiln shelves. So I'm constantly evolving the process to try and look at molds and make it more and more sustainable. I dabbled in like 3D printing, and that's not necessarily for me, only because there's a level of detachment from the whole process. I like getting dirty. I like being in my grubby garage,
Hmm.
being covered in crap. It suits me down to the ground. So so at the minute I'm just trying to work with making earthenware molds, like I said, with adding bits of grog in, but it's constantly evolving. So for example, if you're sizing up and it's 9 kilograms of glass, you need to make it really, really durable. So it's a case of putting more grog in there, because you don't want the mold to split and fill your kiln with glass, which hopefully it won't. So I'm
Right.
aware, I can see my kiln is now on 314 degrees, so I don't want it to spill. But yeah, hopefully it'll be all right. But it's a constantly adapting process. And so so with different types of glass, I'll try different types of casting methods. I spent some time with Angela Thwaites, who wrote a book on mold making techniques, and And it's all, people have done PhDs on the best way to make molds. And I've not quite perfected it to the point where I'm getting there, but I need to just find a way that is more sympathetic with the environment, I think. I just need there to be minimal wastage, I think. I just
Yeah,
need a teeny carbon footprint.
right. Yeah, especially because your whole method is recycled glass. It'd be terrible if you're like this, behind the scenes, this bad guy with this, facade that I'm using recycled glass, but I'm actually doing more damage to the environment.
It's
Yeah.
exactly right. And it's
Yeah.
even things like the casting process in the kiln. And I'm thinking, well, how many, how big's the kiln shelf, and how many things can I fit in? And decreasing the length of the casting schedule, because I need it to be as short as possible. Or maybe, if I take it up to a certain temperature and then let it, let the kiln, switch the kiln off, and how does that work? So it's trying to make the whole process as sustainable as possible, which is difficult because everything we do carries a carbon footprint.
Hmm.
I don't know. It's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, I heard a guy one day. I can't remember who it was, but he was being an older glass artist, lamp worker, and he was asked like what his footprint was, and he's like, probably the size of Rhode Island.
I know.
It's
I
like the
know.
smallest state here in the country, and it's like, yeah. And as a boro artist, our material isn't really recyclable. I mean, it is. It can be reused somewhat, but it's so weird because like to me, like soft glass and like Moretti and different things like that, it's a lot more sensitive. The process is, I guess, in a delicacy in a sense, and that kind of glass can be somewhat recycled. But like borosilicate, you can beat it up, you can use hot and heavy flames, and but then when it's back to a solid state and it's created in its shape, there's only so much you can do afterwards. If say the piece breaks, what are you going to do with this thing? Throw it
It
in the
is
garbage.
possible to cast it though. It's tricky. It's not tricky to do. I've got the firing schedules that you're more than welcome to have, but it is possible to cast it. So if you had a mold, you could pop it in the kiln and try and cast it, and it creates some beautiful effects. The colors will change, but it is possible to cast it.
Oh,
So
interesting.
everything can be reused and cast. It can just be a bit temperamental at first. So don't throw anything away. Keep it and have a go.
I used to do that, and I had garbage cans upon garbage cans of point handles and all kind of scraps of crap, and I have to go back to saving my stuff because, like, I've always loved finding like little bits of clear glass. I had like a piece of silver on it that I was using or something like that, And those kind of things would be fun in the fusing process. And it's interesting too. So with your casting, did you ever do like ladling the glass into the mold itself, or do you mostly use like chips and chunks and then put that into your mold?
I see. I tried doing that, and I love doing it. I love sand casting, and even though it's hard work, isn't it? Because if, like the ladle's heavy,
Yeah.
but I really really enjoy doing it. But with the facilities that I had available at the time, I could only use literally the furnace glass that was available, so I couldn't use the recycled glass. So I went back to casting in the kiln. But I love doing it. I love everything in the hot shop. Everything glass related is great.
Yeah, I know.
I'd love
There's been
I'd love
days.
to go back to it. There's an artist called Frederick Rombach who's based in Europe, and he casts these. Oh, and he blows using all recycled glass, and he will use beer bottles and things. So he has a furnace set up specifically for that. And there's another artist, amazing one called John Lewis, based in the UK, and his furnace just contains television glass. And so that might
Oh,
be a way for me to do that. This yeah, so he's just got the crucible just filled with recycled television glass.
that's fascinating. It reminds me when I was a young parent. My daughter had a Elmo video, and it was like Elmo Green saves the world or something like that, type of thing. But it was all about recycling and whatever. And they were showing this. I don't know if it was I think it was a small community in Africa, and the kids would go around and collect all the Coke bottles and stuff, and then they would bring the Coke bottles to the local glass blowers, and then they would crush that right there in front of the kids. They would run it down a conveyor belt, and it would crush the glass. They'd weigh it out, and then they would pay the kids, and then they would take that glass and then take it to their hot shop, and they were making solid sculptures, elephants and rhinoceroses and things, to help sustain their community there financially wise. And
Wow.
yeah, it was fascinating seeing that, seeing this kind of circle of life in a sense of the raw material being used and then recycled and then turned back into something new.
It's
And
amazing.
yeah, it was fascinating seeing that. And that was like early on in my glass career, maybe like 3 years into it.
Yeah,
And that was again
Coke
going.
bottles are really interesting because they've got the decal on them. It might be red and white, and but
Mhm.
when they've got Coca-Cola written on them in white, you can keep that in the casting process. So I can take my figures out, and they will have Coca-Cola written on them. So, but it
That's fun.
shows the
Yeah.
narrative of the where the glass has been beforehand, which I always find interesting. So if you make something out of television glass, so there's broken television glass from the 80s and 90s, and we think how long we spent. I watched Star Wars. I remember watching Star Wars on on those big TVs, with the big thick glass, and how many
Hmm.
hours I'd watch it on video, like on repeat and on repeat. And then for that figure then to become, for the glass to then become something else, it takes on a new lease of life, really.
Yeah, it's so neat. And I saw like the Millennium Falcon that you made and you posted on for May 4th,
That's it.
which is
May the
just
fourth be with you. It has to be
yeah,
done.
yeah, it was awesome.
It was heavy. It's just under 5 kilograms, so it was quite heavy. I love Star Wars. Everyone loves Star Wars, don't they?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, we're a Star Wars family here. So with something like that, so like with the Millennium Falcon, you have all these little grooves and edges and crevices and things like in that shape to get, are you when you're doing and grinding something down like that, are you going for a certain look in terms of like the clarity of it? You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like,
I'm I'm
how do you get into all the edges and the nooks and crannies? I guess.
I'm trying to I'm trying to get into the nooks and crannies as best I can and trying to recreate it as best I can. It's not always easy, and I'm asking glass to do things it doesn't want to necessarily do. So I
Hmm.
use a lot of things like dentist tools. So my dentist kindly, I explained to him what I was doing, because actually dentists play around with molds all the time, don't they, with
Yeah.
various things. So I've spent weeks and weeks with my dentist pedantically asking questions about, when they make crowns and all these different things. And he's given me all these amazing like teeny tools that can get us into all the nooks and crannies. So yeah, so it's a, and it's looking at the images, isn't it? It's looking at the shape.
Yeah.
It takes a long time. You've got to kind of be a bit pedantic about it. But
Yeah.
I
I'd
don't
say so.
mind spending hours looking at the Millennium Falcon. I'm perfectly happy with that. So I can't think of a better way. I'm lucky because I have two sons who both they love Star Wars, they love Marvel, love Lego. So in our really, it's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. My son's the same way. My daughter too. My daughter's 21 today, which is just
Oh, happy
crazy.
birthday to her.
Yeah, so
21 years young.
yeah, so wild. I still can't believe it.
I bet
But
that's
like,
flown by though, hasn't it?
yeah, because so the year I started blowing glass was the year she was born, which is how I know how long I've been doing this for. So
Brilliant.
it's yeah, yeah. I don't know where I would be right now actually if she wasn't born at that time of my life. Who knows?
They're
Definitely.
good fun, aren't they? They complete you.
Oh yeah, completely. Yeah, absolutely. My son will be 13 in August this year. So yeah,
So you've got
it's
the
just
teenage years ahead, the time of
yeah,
excitement.
yeah. I know.
So is she based near you at the minute where you get to see her today?
Actually, so they are with their mother over. They actually still live in St. Pete, and I'm here in Orlando, which is about an hour and a
Ah,
half away. But because the state locked down here for whatever period of time, I didn't see the kids I saw them once over 2 months, and
oh,
was super frustrating. But thank God, we have the technology that we have to FaceTime and can
exactly.
stay in touch in a sense. So yeah,
Exactly.
we're actually gonna go grab my son this week and bring him back here for the weekend and get some quality time in. That's what we've been missing. But
Brilliant.
you, you know,
It's great though to have the opportunity, because with things like Zoom and you can see them and talk to them. It's great,
hmm
really. And I can do
yeah,
that with my parents or friends who are scattered all over, and it's an ideal opportunity to be able to do that. So I probably see my mum now more than I've ever done before, but it's through Zoom, which is fine.
yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, this Zoom thing's fun. Like I usually have like I saw your backgrounds, all your little glass pieces, and I'll usually have like something Disney in the background for myself. Like I'm in the park right now or something. It's fun.
Perfect.
It's fun. Well, you were
With the
saying like with the
Disney ears.
yeah. Actually, I have some friends that do a Disney podcast out in California, and about 3 weeks ago I recorded with them, and I was gonna wear my ears for the recording, but
Brilliant.
it was taking out the background. It was kind of goofing up with the imagery behind me, so I took them off and didn't wear them.
Oh, it's not
Yeah.
fair, is it?
I know. But you're saying with the Millennium Falcon and the Star Wars thing, one of my most, I guess, current favorite Disney memories was taking my son for the first time. It was actually the first time that my wife and all of us went to Disney together as a unit, and they had the Galaxy's Edge there with the Millennium Falcon, and it's a full scale replica of the ship.
No way.
Oh yeah,
No
it's
way.
incredible. Like I was all misty and teary and stuff when my daughter and I first saw it, the first time. But just the expression on his face, like we got it on video of him like walking around the corner, and there's the Millennium Falcon sitting there. It's just the
Oh my
awe
God.
of
That is
seeing this
so
thing for the first
cool.
time. Yeah,
That
and
is
then they
so
have like
cool.
a ride that you go inside of it and you can actually fly it, and it's pretty neat. So
That's amazing. I remember I grew up in North Wales and there'd be, I had two sisters, so I was one of three girls, and there would be fancy dress parties, and we were supposed to go dressed conventionally, and I'd always go dressed as like Chewie Chewbacca or something. And like the looks that you get, so North Wales is a very small place. There's not that many people, and then when Chewie starts walking down the road, it's just you get a lot of heads turning.
that's
I,
amazing.
cou- I couldn't do the conventional things at all. One day I will be conventional, but just not yet.
Hence why you're a glass artist.
Exactly. It's probably compulsory, isn't it? I wouldn't change it.
Yeah, same here. I know, and it's amazing, like the trials and tribulations that glass we go through with glass, and I always talk about on the show like how much it just bleeds into our lives, and just makes us better human beings.
It's so true, though. Every aspect does. It really does.
Hmm.
It's nice to be able to share that in the way that you are, and you're making it more accessible to so many people all across the world, really, which is great.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's weird. When I was first doing the show, I would go into the hosting company that I put the show through, and they have a geographical stats map of the world that you can see where your show is being listened to, and you can go like into like the country and then go into like certain little cities and towns within these countries, and I mean literally like all over the world. Like South Korea for a little bit of time was one of my highest downloaded countries, which I
Wow.
thought was weird. Yeah, I don't know if there were Americans that were based there or if it was just the South Korean glass artists that found the show. I don't really know. But I learned how to say thank you in Korean to say thanks to those listening, and I couldn't tell you how to say it right now, but at that point in time, I did. It was yeah, it's interesting to see the people that you can reach out to just internationally. It's fantastic.
Exactly. It changes the landscape, but it gives people the opportunity to ask questions, doesn't it? Because
Hmm.
it's an amazing material. So it does it just opens a dialogue when they're, and it's a time when people are asking more questions. So it's great. You're doing a good thing.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that. If there's anything else you want to share, any shows you have coming up, any exhibitions, or anything that you're
Um,
involved with yourself?
I'm trying to think. I exhibit in various places, all over, and there's lots of exhibitions all over. But I think I don't know. I probably the thing that I'd probably want to say the most is that it's great working with glass. I love it, and I'm really lucky because I have this amazing opportunity to work with glass, and I can interweave geology, sustainability, and recycling, and try and bring people together in a process which is exactly what you're doing. So I don't know. I just think I'm living the dream. It's great.
Hmm.
I think it's wonderful. But yeah, I am on Instagram under Hannah Gibson Glass. And if anyone ever has any questions about recycling glass or using it in torch work and experimenting within torch work, and please feel free to just send me a message, because like I said, I've got all these books filled with all these random firing schedules, and I'd love to be able to share them with as many people as possible. So I've done all of the boring work, so I'd love to be able to share it with people. So yeah, just play with recycled glass. It's great fun.
Yeah, I got to start doing more of that for sure. Definitely
Go
have
for
inspired
it.
me. Yeah.
Never throw anything away. It can always be reused. It might not look conventional, but it can still be reused.
Yeah, I love that. Heck yeah. Well, again, Hannah, thank you so much for coming on the show, and I'm glad we were able to, timing wise, to make this all work out for each other.
No, the pleasure's all mine. And please wish your daughter a very happy 21st birthday.
Yeah, I sure will. And I'll make sure I have all your links and everything else in the show notes for people to follow you. And
It's a genuine honor to talk to you. Yeah, it's great fun.
yeah, likewise. Thank you so much, hon. And again, I'll be in touch here very soon.
Go for it. Any questions about recycling glass, let me know. I'll gladly answer them.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll be asking you lots of questions because now my brain is going 100 miles an hour.
So when you're at home and you're looking in your fridge, just think, oh, I know, don't throw that away. Just take it to
Yeah.
the hot shop. An empty gherkin jar, doesn't matter what it is, keep it.
Awesome.
It's a pleasure to talk to you, though, and you take care.
You too, hon. Have a great night.
You too. Stay safe. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.